We are live.
Thank you. Students, if you guys want to come to the front, we're going to start our seminar. Okay, I think we're good. So, good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you here. It's amazing. Lots of people showed up. So, I am the chair for the APPNA YPC committee for this year. I'm also program director for General Psychiatry and Addiction Medicine Fellowship Program. And we are going to do this live seminar, APPNA YPC Residency Q&A, and let's hear it from the PD. So we really wanted to get to the point where you guys can hear directly from the program directors what they're looking for. I have some questions, I'll ask them. The format would be, I can probably go down the PDs and ask everyone a new question, but they can all share their input. So if I ask a question from Dr. Jamshed, then Dr. Sadiq, anyone who wants to follow up and add their comments, so you can hear from the program directors for different programs and also the fellowship directors. So it's a great panel and it's a great mix. So let me introduce you to our panelists. The first one is Dr. Navira Jamshed. She is the geriatric fellowship director. Then we have Dr. Faisal Aziz. He is the program director for integrated vascular surgery. Then we have Dr. Sadiq Naveed. He is the program director for general psychiatry. And then we have Dr. Bas, and he is the program director for pediatric fellowship. And then we have Dr. Faisal Aziz, he is the program director for neurology. So quite diverse panel. So hopefully we'll get a lot of questions answered. The questions I've arranged is like from the basics to sort of the advanced level. So we'll start with what program directors have to deal with the first thing when you send your application in. And over the years, what has happened is that we get blasted with like a lot of applications. So for me, if I have 4 spots, we get 700 to 1,000 applications. It's very hard to go through those applications. So what programs do, they use what we call filters. So let's ask from program directors, like what kind of filters they have seen being used, they use it, and how do they use it to their favor. So you know on your end, whether you fit that filter. If you don't fit, what else can you do to get across those? So I'll start with Dr. Navira Jamshed. Your thoughts about those filters. Do we have a mic here on this side?
What else can they do beyond?
So application screening process, what are the common filters that program use?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. So depending on the specialty you're applying, we'll have. But I actually looked at the ERAS filters this time. The hard filters for programs can be, have you passed an exam or not, what the scores are. But they are starting to also add medical colleges as filters. So that's the reality. You guys should be aware of that. And eventually, year of graduation. But I sincerely think that, year of graduation, I know there's a lot of anxiety about it, is not as big as you guys feel it is. It's usually starts with the scores and which college you're applying for. And you need to understand, it's just not pertinent to Pakistan only. They do that for all IMGs. They have a list of medical schools for all international countries that they use. And this is typically in internal medicine in the primary care specialties. And we have people here for other specialties, others.
So if anyone wants to add on the fellowship side, or yeah, they're very good. Anyone, if you have any comments, just feel free.
It's along the same lines as well. I think, year of graduation scores, and I think the other filters that we normally, surgery especially for foreign graduates, anybody interested in surgery, I think there has to be something in your resume to resonate with the surgical interest, surgical background, to suggest that you really want surgery or not. So that's something else. Thank you.
So I think in the last few years, programs have gone for this transition. Some programs are doing this, some are, not doing this. Programs are going more towards holistic application reviews. So they want to quickly review application and see if you meet, you can be good fit for the program. But there are still quite a bit number of programs for using filters. Filters can be, I think, can be overrated if you can connect with the program director or faculty. Some of the hard filters that you can probably override is first of all the visa issues. So if you are a visa requiring IMGs, and you're applying to a program which does not offer visa, is going to be a rejection. So please make sure that when you're applying, as far as the visa requirements are concerned, you are inconsistent and don't apply to a program if you're visa requiring candidate. Don't apply to a program that does not offer visa except J1 ACDME visa. Second filter is obviously the scores, and programs have been cut off. As Dr. Jamshed mentioned, year of graduation. I think year of graduation for most programs is 5 years, but there are a lot. If you look at the Pakistani IMGs who passed last year, a lot of them passed within 3 years if you're a fresh graduate. More than year of graduation, what matters is if you have been clinically active. So if you have long years of gap, that may not reflect well on your application. But let's say if you have graduated 5 years ago, but you have been clinically active and you have gained the clinical experience, it becomes less of hindrance. You just need to show it to the program director by an email that I have been clinically active all these years. So I'll stop here. So if there are other pointers, other speakers.
There are other pointers you guys can share, or otherwise we'll move on. Okay. So as Dr. Naveed was mentioning, you can show your interest. So one question that comes to mind, we have for a few years, but I think last year was the year where most of the specialists participated in it. We utilize signaling, where you can signal the program and show your interest. And so I just wanted to hear from the panel, what's been their experience? And do you think this is something that's helpful for them? How can they use it to their benefit? Anyone can take it.
From the Alliance of Program Director for Internal Medicine, I can tell you that even for IMGs, they are looking at signals. The reason is that some programs get thousands of applications. It can be from 3,000 to 6,000. And if let's say you have the scores cut off and you have the school and year of graduation, but you haven't signaled them, then they're going to interview somebody else, or not even interview, just look at the application. So signaling does actually help even international medical graduates. I understand that we can go anywhere sometimes and we're not limited, but that's okay. You can still signal programs that you think. I personally would signal programs that are your, how should I say it, within reach programs. I think that's the one I would signal, not the out of reach and not the ones that are sort of your backup. The within reach programs where there are other alumni graduates from your school and where you can make an impact and talk to them and reach out to them. Thank you.
Any additional comments to that?
I think any applicant should be well educated about what specialty they're applying, where are their chances, know your field, be well educated about it. Where do you have the chance? There's no point of sending 10 emails to Harvard programs, right? Not that you will not get in there. As an example, just know where you have the chance, and then what makes your application stand out. Mention that in that email or communication. If you are good at research, then highlight that. If you are just emailing, sir, madam, I want to know whether you take IMDs or not, probably you're not going to get a response. Or if you say, I'm very much interested in your program, but you don't have a reason why should they be interested in you. So state that, introduce yourself. Your application is your introduction. Your communication is the only way they know who you are. So make your communication to the point, precise, and make it stand out why they should even entertain your application.
Second that, I think the most important thing in the email is that the email should have a point in addition to the application itself. when you submit an application, obviously you're interested in the program. The email should bring something in addition to that. Regarding the signaling, I completely agree. I think if you are planning to use the signaling or if the program is involved, you should definitely use it, but use it appropriately for programs that you are really interested in and you think you have a decent chance of matching.
So I think there are informal signaling that has been going on for a long time, like people sending emails to the programs, showing their interest in the program. Frankly speaking, program directors get a lot of emails. I just took on this role, program just got approved, but I'm getting emails already. Then this is the formal signaling that started in many specialties actually year before last year. If you look at the data from 2021 match, signaling gets your application reviewed. Signaling does not have a huge impact on your whether you're going to get an interview with or whether you're going to get a match at that program. So I did an informal poll in Twitter this year for signaling positive outcomes are better than last year. So I think it's a tool, it's a tool to reflect your interest in the programs. You use it to your advantage. Like Dr. Jamshid was mentioning, signal the programs that are in your reach based on your credentials. So know your credentials well. If you know, and I will apply to this myself. If I'm a candidate who's likely to match in the community program, but if I'm gonna signal John Hopkins, Harvard, Baylor, I'm probably not gonna. My application, I'm not probably gonna get it. So know your application well. And try to apply to the programs that are within your reach.
Okay, thank you. So the next question I have on panelists is, with the step 1 pass fail, the impact of that and the importance of the step 3. And I want to hear from the general secretary, also from fellowship directors, because step 3 may be more important in that fellowship area. So what are your thoughts, and who wants to take it?
I actually wrote an article about that in JAMA 2 years ago. My opinion is that it will hurt for medical graduates. Simply because at the end of the day, I think none of us would like to be known by a 3-digit number. All of us are much more than a 3-digit number. We're not but sadly enough, the problem is that from the program standpoint, any candidates performance on USMLEs is a very good indicator of how hardworking you are. Are you going to pass the boards or not? So no matter what the programs say, I think if you take a decent program, we do look at the. And the way I look at this for foreign graduates, we used to have 2 numbers, step 1 and step 2, and that's reduced to 1 step. And the other consequence of that is that I think there'd be a lot of pressure on all the applicants, foreign graduates or not, will perform really big.
Yeah, for medicine and family medicine, the step 1 score, I can tell you in general, was not taken into consideration anyways. So the pass and fail is not that relevant. I do know in general surgery, they look at every possible score. So depending on the program is where the step 3 will come in. If it's a very high end program in the top 10 or even in the top 20, they're not going to care if you've taken step 3. Okay, they're inviting you because they think that should fit in with the profile. But the other programs, especially community programs that you go to, if you are beyond 3 years of graduation, I think the step 3 is helpful because it reflects on your clinical skills. They expect that if you are 3 years out of graduation, you have been practicing medicine. They expect that you have done house job. They expect that you are doing something. So the step 3 for you guys, if you're beyond at 3 years or beyond, is more a reflection of what they expect a resident to do here. So I think it's important in that way. I don't think it has any bearing on recent graduates at all. In fact, it really doesn't help in any way at all. And if you just graduated this year and then you take step 3 next year and you pass it, no big deal. It's fine. it's not gonna really make a difference. Thank you.
So the realities for the match are much different for IMGs. In average psychiatry program, they get about 1,000 applications. They review roughly about 500 applications. So you have 500 people you're competing against. So having step 3 definitely puts you above those candidates. I think there are certain situations where step 3 can be helpful, and that's where I agree with Dr. Jamshed. First of all, step 3 is helpful if you're, you have graduated long time ago, or more than 3-5 years. Step 3 is helpful if you have low CK score. In those situations, step 3 is helpful, and you can show that there is a trajectory of growth. Third thing, especially in psychiatry, because we don't get to learn that much medicine. So I want people to focus on psychiatry when they're in psychiatry residency, and that puts a hindrance to their learning in the residency. So step 3 is out of the way. This is one last thing for people to worry about. Another aspect of step 3 is the visa, right? So J1 and H1, we struggle with in 2022, about 28 GY1s. They were delayed for the visa, J1 and H1. Out of those 28, 24 were J1 visa holders. Only 4 were H1s. So if you can take step 3, that's great. Take it, please, because it's gonna put you over edge among other applicants. And one last thing for you guys to worry about if you can focus on something else. For step 1 being pass and fail, no doubt it puts us at a disadvantage. What you can do is when you go home today, there's representative physician organizations like American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Psych Association. See what are the volunteer opportunities in there. All of these organizations have state chapters. See what you can do in there to add something to your resume. Then step 1 is score does not necessarily. Okay.
So from the fellowship, do you guys look at step 3? Because then at that point, when they apply, like their performance on that, if they have failures in terms of the board pass rate and taking them into your fellowship, is it important to pass it?
So I would briefly say the stronger candidate for residency may not necessarily need step 3, but a weaker candidate for residency does need step 3. Because if you have attempts or your scores are low, or there is another gap in your application, then you want to have more things on your side. So step 3 score. When you are applying for fellowship, visa point was already clarified. You need step 3 for H1B visa, no matter what. For fellowship, most of the places want you to have an independent license to practice, and that requires your step 3. So you have to make sure if you're applying in a fellowship which hires you as a clinical instructor, if they're not GME fellowships, then you have to have step 3 and an independent license to practice as an attending. Basically, you're hired as a clinical instructor in those fellowships which are not ACGME. So you need step 3 for that.
So just continuing the same thought, you mentioned someone is a weaker candidate. One thing that keeps coming back up is year of graduation. A lot of comparative programs now are using filter for 2 to 3 years. Most of the program 5 years, but beyond 5 years, it's very hard to really get your application reviewed. What is the impact of it to your graduation first, and then what can those candidates do to their chances?
So it's a touchy topic, if you are out from your residency for a while, again, as I mentioned before, your application should have reasons why there's a gap, and that gap must be covered by clinical activities, research activities, or even if whatever you were doing, there should be a story behind it. Keep in mind, they want to know who you are. And if you don't say who you are, you don't tell if your story is not clear, that goes against you. Obviously, if there are a lot of fresh US grads, US citizen foreign grads, and then IMGs who are just recently grads, a lot of international graduates now are taking USMLE 1 in their field by 3 or 4 in the medical school PGY, the medical school MS 3 or 4. So obviously, people who are many years out from their medical school, they're going to be at disadvantage. So you should have something to cover that gap. Either you did a fellowship or residency or something in your home country, or if you are in transition for the immigration or coming here and going back, etc., then there should be something. You would do some research. So keep in mind these days, a gap only can be covered or overlooked if you have done something outstanding during that gap. If you just say that I was waiting for, thinking about, and how I have got here, etc., these are not going to help a whole lot.
If I might add, I think if the program is using a computer filter of a cutoff for graduation, it's their loss, and there's no way you can overcome that. But if they have a criteria, not a filter, but a criteria that we have only connected for in the last 5 years, there might be a way to overcome that. And so we, as opposed to graduation of year, look at clinical activity or research. And so you should be clinically active in the last 5 years, which could mean anything. You've done a fellowship afterwards, you are doing medical officership in Pakistan, you are doing research for 2 years, and let's say you have a gap. Let's say you graduated in 2010, and from 2010 to 2015, you did absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. But from 2015 onwards, we have been working. You got a job in a hospital in Pakistan, you worked as a medical officer, then you did FCPS in myopia neurology, and now you're clinically active for the last 7 years, right? So even though you graduated 10, 15 years ago, you are clinically active even though your year of graduation is long time ago. So what I am more relevant is the recent past. Are you clinically active in the last 2-3 years? Or when was that interruption? If your interruption was in the last 2 years, then that's a negative. If you had an interruption 2 years, 3 years ago, but last 3 years you've been active, that's good enough for me. And so I think it's the only way to overcome that gap is to say, okay, since that gap, this is what I've been doing. I'm clinically active now. That's what's in your control. You can't go back and change time when it is already passed.
Thank you. I think we've covered it well, right?
I just want to say one thing. If you are thinking of taking the step 3, you must pass. Not fail the step 3. So if you're not confident you're going to pass it, don't take it. Because if you fail your step 3, it will look like your clinical skills. So whatever ways you guys use to test that, please make sure you.
So the next is, I think, people have mentioned, so a couple of things, so let's ask that question. What are some of the red flags in the application and what is the best place to address in the application? It's the most common ones.
It's a difficult question. I think there can be multiple red flags, but I think in my mind, dishonesty is the biggest red flag, no matter where it comes from. It could be applying an application. There are things which are, I mean, it could be so many different, but I think when you're filling out the application, make sure you're honest. So I'm program director for about 8 years now, and I've seen all different varieties. For example, somebody making up, on the publication sector, writing down a paper which never existed, and assuming that a program or no program will have enough time to look at the paper. You never know. Somebody actually likes the idea and can look it up, and that is such a big red flag. Do not do that. I would rather have you have a very small application, but whatever's there is absolutely honest, rather than trying to fudge up the CV. As foreign graduates, I can tell you one thing which can hurt us the most is trying to fudge up the CV by different things. And apart from that, I think, when you write personal statement, being honest in personal statement as well. Do not write anything which is not true. For example, I'm, born in Pakistan, did medical school in Pakistan. I know how people in a house job. You should not write that you did a Whipple by your own self in house job, right? Because anybody can put you in from third world country. know that trainees do a lot in Pakistan as compared to here, but do not do anything to sound short. So anything at the bottom line which is dishonest or not true is a bigger. Please do not. Thank you. That's good.
Continuing with Dr. Aziz's one, and I will be a little bit blunt. I think professionalism is one of the hardest core competencies to remediate. There's some core competencies, medical knowledge, patient care. You can look for 6 core competencies. Professionalism and maybe communication skills, they are really hard to mediate or to work on. And Pakistani IMGs struggle with them the most. They have excellent medical knowledge, they're great clinicians. They can look up things, but when it comes to, and I can see where it is coming from because it's part of the match. I have been in that spot. So we try to mold ways to get our needs met, but it doesn't work that way. So like Dr. Aziz was saying, and it goes for everyone, if you have a short CV that is true, I will take that, than a CV that is fluffed up, or CV that is made up. About the red flag question, so first you need to know if a red flag is a red flag or not. So I was asked this question. So we have APPNA's IT applicant group. Someone asked if score of 230 is a red flag for a psychiatry applicant on CK. It's an excellent score. So first you need to know whether you actually have red flags or not red flags. Then second thing is that you need to know what are modifiable things and what are non-modifiable things. Things that have happened in the past cannot really change that. But you can focus on things that can be modified. And I can tell you, each of you in the room have some strengths. So work on those strengths and see what you can modify and become a better candidate.
Anyone else wants to add? And then where should you address if you have? What's the best place in the application?
I think, I'm not a believer of red flag situation, so I don't even know what that means. But all the things that they've said, if you want to think of those as red flags, sure. Those are not necessarily red flags as such, but those are important things. I mean, if you're dishonest, we've seen plagiarism on personal statements. We've seen things copied and pasted from the internet. I have seen 2 personal statements that are exactly the same. Not necessarily in the words, but in the story. I reviewed them myself last year from our. The other thing is that's important is your letter of recommendation. So just doing having clinical experience in the US, but with a letter of recommendation that is very simple and bland and really generic is really not going to be good enough. So I can tell you many of us, I shouldn't say many, some people have templates. And what you do is you have a template of how you might want to write a letter for someone who's average. And then, you put in a few things, letter bandia. But if someone really impresses me, I have a blank page. I'm going to write exactly what I think of that person. So that's the kind of letter you need. I know it sounds hard, but I promise you, if you do your clinical experience with that approach, that I want a letter from this person, and I want them to write about me and how I did, even if your personal statement is very simple, that letter will have so much weight. It's really important. So every part of the application is important. The red flag or things that we look for in every aspect. We look for it in the resume, in the personal statement, in the letter of recommendations, in the scores. So.
Add one thing as well. So this is the era of artificial intelligence. It's the first match after ChatGPT has been introduced. Please do not use ChatGPT. Why? Because if you want to experiment yourself, somebody in med school recently showed us that if you do something on ChatGPT and copy paste the ChatGPT again and ask it, did you write it? And it will tell you exactly 100%, 89% what content came from that. So if some I would not be surprised if some personal statements looks really, really good, and somebody just copy paste it and we'll find out if that.
Anyone else? I think what was,
I just want to mention two things. I know there are situations where the letter of recommendation is not written by the person whose signature is at the bottom. If you have a letter of recommendation like that, don't submit. So if you wrote it, somebody else wrote it, their friend wrote it, what was that? That letter of recommendation has to come from the person who signed the letter at the bottom. Especially important with these electronic signatures. Second thing, if you have a deficiency, the best way to cover that is in the personal statement. That's one application, part of the application which is read by everyone. Whenever the application is reviewed, so if you really have a major deficiency, I would mention it and address it and explain it in the personal statement. Whether it takes a whole paragraph or it takes 2 lines, that's up to you, but you have to describe it, you have to explain it, the explanation, the reasoning behind it, right? And what you've done to cover that deficiency. And then my only caveat to this negative thing is, we understand that people from Pakistan are very hard work, but there's only so much time anyone has in the day. So if you're listing experiences and there is a discrepancy, you're working as a medical officer in one place for 60 hours a day, and you're also working in research for 40 hours a day, and you're also doing clinical, volunteer work on the side. At some point, it becomes hard for us to believe that. So you might be doing it, but it's hard for us to understand how that is possible consistently for the whole year. And so when you are writing these, make sure that you are not, there's no conflicting information on the application or anything which can be perceived as conflicting information on the application.
okay, thank you. So, yeah, you got the answer. So people sometimes have medical illnesses. Somebody that got diagnosed with cancer, they had to go through a treatment. There's an interruption in the medical education. They've had a failure, step 1, step 2, they had to retake it. Different type of issues you may have in your CV gap. Address it in the personal statement, what you did about it, what you learned from it, and how you got better and improved your score, or maybe if it was an illness, adversity, how you develop resilience. So talk about it, and super successful will be the best place to do it. The next question is people who, so again, the older graduates who had a prior career in Pakistan, say surgery. Now they come to the US and now they want to return medicine. They're switching the career. And how do they go about it? What do they need to do? Is it something advisable to do? Is there, have people done it and done it successfully? So any thoughts on that?
Let the surgeon start.
Okay.
No, I think, I have to tell you that I think, if you put yourself in any program director's shoes, I think program directors are generally finding people who want to help. Also, I think anybody experienced in this room knows that we all have done mistakes in our lives. We all have changed our hearts throughout our life. It's okay to change the heart. It's okay to have a change of mind to do things. We all have done. If you're not, I'm suggesting any perfect person. We all have been gone through this. So as long as you have a good story, it should be a good story, though, believable story. Much more than saying, well, I did surgery and surgery was harder, so I'm switching to something else. That's not a story. That may be a fact, but that's just not a fact you want to mention. But you have to have a good story, and I'll ask you how would you see it? Yeah.
So there are other people here who have seen stories, but it's exactly really about the story, right? So I came to the US to do general surgery, got in, and then was on a J1 and then switched. And when you're switching, okay, don't assume that, again, program directors in general are kind people. Don't assume that that's a problem. When I'm switching, I'm actually thinking, okay, I'm not doing general surgery for whatever reason, personal or whatever. Now I have to think, what fits my profile? What should I do? So share that story in your personal statement. I did a year of general surgery. This is what I learned, and this is what happened. And I had made a conscious decision that I would like to do family medicine and not internal medicine. That was my story. I consciously decided to do family medicine because I had general surgery skills. I wanted to do OBGYN in family medicine. There's a pathway. I wanted to do some surgical stuff, some procedures in the clinic, this and that. You can't do that much, with internal medicine, you can do C-section stuff. That became my story. So just be honest. I have a fellow right now, MedPeds fellow, a MedPeds resident who's doing fellowship in geriatrics, but I have known from day one, she wants to do women health. I'm actually going to help her get it. So there's nothing wrong. And this is one country where you can change your mind tomorrow. The undergraduate students here change their majors 5 times on average. So don't worry about that.
Actually, my wife doesn't let me change my mind, she does it. So I think you don't need to justify the change in specialty. It is your decision, it's your choice to make. What I want to know is, psychiatry traditionally has been looked at as a backup specialty. That's not the truth anymore. What I want to know is, if you have a background in surgery, you pick psychiatry. Why psychiatry? Why not internal medicine? Or why not pathology, pediatrics? So if you can address that, what about psych 2? And if you have some experience that would describe or will be a attestation to your interest in psych, that would be helpful. You don't need to be confident. You don't need to just. It's also.
Okay, well, you have something to add to this.
Yes, I'll second everything Dr. Naveed said. I think from the program director standpoint, the concern is, are you using my specialty as a backup? If you can address that question clearly in your application, I'll be more than happy to invite you. If you can't, then you should not assume that we should invite you if you are not sure whether you are rank or not high enough or not. As far as switching, once you have made a decision, you should be able to show what you have done since then, to show that you are actually interested in that specialty. So let's say you are switching from surgery to psychiatry. You have to have some experiences in psychiatry to say, okay, this is what I'm doing, but I'm really passionate. I'm putting in this 6-month period, 8-month period, doing this to show that I'm really sincere in my switching. If you're interested in neurology and you're interested in psychiatry, you can only get experiences on one side, right? You cannot say I'm interested in both and pursue both equally. That gives us a confused mixed signal. If you are switching, and there has to be a definite clear switch.
Thank you.
I think understanding it yourself is the most important thing. Like, you should know exactly why. And this question is going to come up, and you should rehearsal that answer. There is no harm saying, I know I'm not going to get surgery residency here. I'm not that competitive a candidate. But that doesn't mean that this specialty which I'm applying is bad or inferior. I think you should have a reason why are you choosing that, for example, internal medicine. So there should be a story behind it. Again, as I said, your application is your story, and your story should be straight and strong to the point so that they understand it. There's no harm saying, okay, I think I'm older now. I cannot pursue a 6-year, 7-year, 8-year long residency. I have 2 5-year-old, 3-year-old kid, and I have decided I will take a specialty which requires only 3 years of residency, and that will give me good quality life and time with my children. And on the floors, I realized that I love doing medicine, so it's perfectly good reason and answer.
Okay, so I think in the same way, because it's competitive, people are applying to different specialties, you will have a backup. Some backups are fine, like psychiatry, neurology, you can justify both. In some ways, internal medicine, family medicine, you can still have the same sort of skills and practice. The mistakes that people make is that they use the same person statement to all of them. So make sure you have a different person statement for different specialty that you're applying to. And just be honest. I think honesty is the key. We understand it's very hard. Sometimes people are applying to multiple specialties, and that's the reality.
I just want to add, I have my senior resident here, actually, all the way in the back, not listening to me, that's okay. But one of my other senior residents was from China. He was a cardiothoracic surgeon doing family. That's a big deal. But when we had a patient in the ICU, we called.
Call it. Okay, so the next one is the letter of recommendation. You've heard a little bit about it, but I would like the panelists to talk about, do they need to be from the same specialty? A, how many are required? Is it 3? Is that the number that we need? And people who are coming from Pakistan and it's hard to come here, visa issues, getting experience. What about the letters they get back from back home? Are they good enough? Who should they go to? Who should be the letter writer? So if you guys can address those and anyone can start.
Specialties, very honest. So to answer your first question, I'm very honest. I wish we could tell our teachers back home how to write good letters. I can't God. Sometimes sometimes you see the. I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. So I was saying that I wish our teachers back home could write better letters. There are many times when I've seen applications of somebody, had, grade scores, 275, 275 in both universities, and you look at the letters from our teachers and the letters are horrible. For example, recently somebody wrote, a dean of our med school wrote in his letter, and then most of the time, the second last paragraph, the last few lines are where people hide the bad stuff in very craft. And it said this man, Mr. Dr. So-and-so, has very colorful personality. So he made me want to say that he's funny or is, or something, but in this culture here, colorful is a bad word. So I wish we could, there's something which is non-modifiable risk factor for all of us, unfortunately. So I wish our teachers could do better. Second, I think in terms of specialties, so I'll let others. I think for surgical specialties, you want to hear from a surgeon saying that this person's interest in surgery is real. This person is, no matter 80 hours a week or 80 hours a day, this person will be able to stand up and able to operate and not complain. So I think that is important. Third thing, I don't want to sound biased, but I think from surgical specialties, at least it's better to have letters from here because most people will know people here. If you get a surgical letter from a private practice in a remote town in Pakistan, unfortunately, that's not how, because you don't know that person. So that's, but I'll leave it to other specialties.
Yeah, for general surgery, I would agree. Just even our application, when I know Dr. Tariq did that, all the letters had to be general surgery. For internal medicine, the recommendation is that at least 2 of them should be from internal medicine, and then the third one can be from a different specialty. I had a mentee who was interested in ophthalmology. That's where she did her electives, but she ended up doing internal medicine. So if you can explain that, then that's fine. I think the number of letter recommendations, you have to follow the guidelines from the program. So we can't tell you how many you need. If you don't have a letter from here, which happened to a lot of people in my class, I know that was a long time ago, but it did. A letter from a faculty of a medical school in Pakistan would have a lot more weight than from private practice in Pakistan. So from Pakistan, I would recommend that letter should be from a faculty. It should say professor, associate, whatever the.
So I think for the latter, I agree with Dr. Faisal Aziz. Our letters and these letters that we get from Pakistan, they actually hurt us more than they help us because they are very bland, and this is something as of now YPC we need to take it back to the medical colleges. But if you've done training in Pakistan, I would suggest that you get a letter from one of your supervisors in Pakistan. Send them, ACTME core competency list. This is quite popular. Want to give them time so they can work on that. personalized letter of recommendations are much better, specialty oriented letters are better. But let's say if you're applying to psychiatry and you're working in neurology with an attending who works in patients with dementia, letters should speak about their interest in psychiatry. And how does that apply to that? For IMSEL, that's a big headache for us. If you have worked with someone for more than 8 weeks and you cannot get it from back home, don't worry about it. Whoever you're working with, just use that SEL. And there are templates that are available for that.
And the most important thing in the letter is writers who know you personally. So try to get a letter from somebody who knows you, can talk about your strengths and weaknesses. And obviously having letter from the same specialty, well-recognized people with foreign training, people realize what the importance of that letter is. And if you think that they don't know, maybe take a sample from them or core competencies, etc. Tell them this is how much, or this is the format they want the letter. Communicate them first. If you have spent some time with them or did something with them, rotation, etc., bring that up, bring your performance up so that they can write a personalized letter for you, not a generic one which doesn't state anything other than you graduated from this college and this point.
I'd like to add one thing as well. So, one thing which happened to me personally, I did not do any house job in Pakistan correctly. And when I asked my teachers for letters and, Mujahid and myself were classmates, 3 of them said, well, put a letter, likho, and then give it to me, I'll sign it. So if I had to go back in time 20 years ago, I would not do that again. Because I feel like, I wrote so many good things about myself that I should be ashamed. I should have not written those things. But if somebody tells you that to write that, and if you unfortunately have to do that, first of all, don't do that. If you have to do that, do not, paint yourself as a superhero. I'm sorry.
Absolutely agree with that statement. I'll say something which might be a little bit different. Now, I know we emphasize the letter writer, but I think the more important thing is the content of the letter, not the name of the letter writer. And so what they are writing about you is more important than who they are, because the letter is about you, not what they have accomplished. We care about you, not them. And so the content of the letter is more important than the person who wrote the letter. That being said, the duration of time you spend with them, which led them to write that letter for you, is equally important. So a big shot doctor in US, Harvard, Mayo, whatever, you work with them for 4 weeks versus you spend 4 months with somebody else. I'll value the letter written by the person who spent 4 months with you because they assessed you better than that person who spent 2 weeks with you, correct? And then a letter from Pakistan, in my opinion, actually can be more valuable for the same reasons I just expressed. Because most likely the time you spent with the physician back home was more than the time you're spending with any letter writer in any observership that you're doing in US. And I'll write a letter which is from a different subspecialty, I think works really well. I've had letters written by non-physicians that I have actually valued more because they were addressing what we are looking for in applicants, right? Professionalism, interpersonal skills, communication, rapport with human beings. And so even if it tells me nothing about your neurological skills, that's more valuable to me because you will learn neurology in residency, but you cannot, honestly speaking, you cannot change the person. There's no way we can change this.
I have thank you for bringing up the confidence. If you have someone, a faculty, maybe they don't know how to write the letter and they ask you to do it for you. What you probably should do and say, that's fine. Can I meet with you to go over my evaluation? Write down the ACGME competencies, the five that we look at, and discuss with them and see where you are in those competencies. And that way, it's the letter that you write, sort of not necessarily for them, it actually has their feedback in it, and it will not look like you said all the great things about yourself. The second thing is that ACGME is moving away from letter of recommendations. Standardized letter of recommendations evaluation actually will start becoming more common. And even now, at least in internal medicine, they're starting to put less emphasis on the letter of recommendation and more on the evaluation. So you go to an observership or you've done your house job, that's the letter they're going to be, which can work both ways, in your favor or, against you.
Okay,
So be ready for that.
so I think a lot of people have had their hands raised, so I'll pause, we'll take 4 comments or questions, and then I'll resume.
Thank you. So a lot of these are incredibly nuanced things and can take a lot of time discussing each one of those points. And a lot of that is also dependent on the recipient, the program director. So someone may be very egotistical and say that, well, I'm a backup for you, so I won't take this class. While on the other hand, another more generous person would say that, well, this person brings competency from another specialty, like one of you pointed out. This is the person I want. But talking about the letters of recommendation, there's a big debate recently about waiving your right to see the letter of recommendation. And it was a very big debate about that. And there are a lot of misconceptions about that among the younger colleagues. It is quite okay when people ask me to write a letter of recommendation. I often ask them to draft some paragraphs. The first 2 or 3 paragraphs are quite standard. Where did they go to medical school? What rotations they did? 2 or 3 things which are biographical. I definitely tell them that you write them. I don't want to go through writing all that stuff for you. But the point about letter from Pakistan, so the dean's letter becomes very important because the dean's letter contains all the stuff that you talked about. The dean's letter should contain, a good dean's letter should contain your class ranking if that is applicable. I know we're moving away from that, but you do put a band to that you're the top 5%, top 10%, etc. But they also talk about the rotations you did, how well you did in each one of those rotations. The catch-22 is that, again, like a couple of you pointed out, they can write very poor English, and there are grammatical and syntax mistakes in that, and sometimes it makes no sense. Here, understanding what they've done from other people previously might be useful for you. And the letter of recommendation, when I was the program director for several years, I would not even read a letter which you had not waived your right to see. Because if you have seen your letter, no one would write you back. They would write you going letter. So the first thing that in reading a letter of recommendation used to be the last paragraph, that you have to mention as a writer of all of you know that did you waive your right to see that letter? If you have not waived the right, and the writer would write that for you, a good writer would write that for you. If you haven't done that, then I wouldn't even read that because I don't know the authenticity of that. And someone on your forum pointed out that, well, I waived the right to see my letter, but I've seen my letter. It doesn't make any sense. That is a major effective breach. I don't know about you, but if I as a program director found that out, I would not proceed with that applicant. Right? So remember, these ethics and morals are very important. Be honest with all those things. And when you say that you're waiving your right to see the letter, you better make sure you waive the right to see that.
So that's a great point, and we have an applicant who said, as you have seen my letters and Dr. this and that wrote me a great letter. And so you can tell. And then we were like, how do you know? The great letter. So be careful what you say.
And I agree, I don't write any letter, it's not willing to waive their rights, it's just kids the point. So you have a question.
Okay, that's not a question. That's kind of an infomercial. I own outpatient psychiatric clinics. If anyone is looking for, yeah.
So there's a question. Yeah.
Can we review the LOR? I was just like, asked that we have asked the physician to upload it on the AMC. We cannot review it.
I can answer that question. I just also wanted to add to what Naveema said. I think, most of us, like Naveema yourself, and we are in a position of influence where we can talk to our medical school alumni and make that change happen. Last year, there was a candidate who gave me feedback because I'm involved with Mr. Alumni that I did so much stuff in medical school and it was not mentioned on the dean's letter. So that's where it hurts the most. I'm not worried about, grammatical mistakes in the dean's letter because that does not reflect on you, it reflects on others. But I also want to add, if on your personal statement and your CV, you have grammatical mistakes, you didn't just pay enough attention, it does not reflect good. To answer your question, if you have said that you gave the right to see the letter, you cannot review the letter either. I would ideally, it's pretty easy to upload a letter recommendation on ERAS for faculty. It takes less than 5 minutes. So you can show them that's how it works and have them upload the letter. You cannot review your letter by law and spirit.
So we have one more question before I resume. So Omar Tariq is going to ask this.
Thank you, Mr. Manway. I'm an interventional radiologist at Rush University, and I've been mentoring students and applicants for the past decade. So there was a lot of talk on back-end specialties. I noticed some points, and I thought it's very important to address them. Remember, residency application process is a changing horizon. So when you say back-end specialty, your back-end specialty has to be relatively easier to get into specialty than what you're applying. The problem is, for the past 2 decades, psychiatry and pathology was primarily used as a backup specialty, not in things have changed. You cannot use psychiatry and pathology as a backup specialty. Now these two are pretty competitive specialty in some ways more than I am. And the reason it is now PDs are realizing people will do these, come into these specialties, work for a year or two, and then they will switch specialties. So what they are doing is they're pretty smart people like Dr. Naveed, and there are so many others. What they are doing is they're looking for specialty specific experience. So if you want to go into psychiatry and pathology, make sure you have that specialty specific experience that includes research, US clinical experience. The other specialties that are looking at specialty specific experience, if you're interested in this, are surgery, neurology, and peds. Now, then what could be the backup specialty? For the past 2 years, I have seen one specialty that used to be very competitive. People used to do 2 to 3 years of research to get into that. And now that's a backup specialty with more than half of the slots unfilled. That's emergency medicine. The citation is in sometime early 2011, 2012, radiology, which is extremely competitive today, became for a little bit less competitive than radiology. That is when people like me were able to get into radiology. So just know that what's happening, what specialties are more competitive, what are less competitive. For the past 2 years, you can use emergency medicine and family medicine as backup. And one quick comment, what you can do if you're applying for residency this year, start working with the personal safety. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll resume that sort of concept to leave what time? How much time again? Okay, so the next one we're going to go to is research experience, and let's talk about is it helpful? What do you guys think when you're reviewing the CV? Is it important for them to have research? Because we get a lot of questions and people like, should I do observership? Should I do research? And is it going to help me get into the residency? So what are your thoughts about research?
From specialty to specialty, as Jonathan said before, if your application is not super strong, you need additive things. Example, programs are competitive, but a recent graduate, after 5 years ago, from thereafter. So she did, she finished her medical school and did MPH in Hopkins, and when she applied to a program, she did not meet any of this focus. 7-year-old graduate. USMLE scores were good, not super good, but she had over 60 papers, and most of them were very high impact papers. And that's the reason why she got into vascular surgery, and now she's an academic vascular surgeon. So I think research, is important. I think when you do research, make sure you do research as well. I'd rather you have one paper which is high impact journal, well done paper, rather than having junk of 20 online publications. That's sometimes I think that doesn't give a good impression. The quality of work is more important than the quantity of research.
Thank you. So for medicine, internal medicine, there are two types of candidates that we look at for where research is considered. One is the one Dr. Aziz is talking about. You have high impact research. Someone's interested in cardiology, has been doing it for 2 years. Very, very good, excellent. That's to me is somebody who's a researcher, right? The other candidates who are not into research, but I, as a program director, need to see that you have the skill set that you needed as a medical student to have. So you may have different types of publications. They may be simple, but they should reflect on the skills you learned. So try to differentiate, and of course, in competitive specialties, that's how you're going to get in is high impact research. But not everybody needs high impact research. We want you to show skills that you have. Okay? Because when you become a resident, no matter what specialty you do, they're now ACJB requirement. We need to resolve.
So, what do you do in research? I think that really matters. And most of people, they start with case reports. I started off with case reports 4 or 5 years ago, and it's okay to start with there. You can build on that work. You're not going to publish in. I have not yet New England Journal of Medicine or JAMA, so it's okay to start with the case report. But the skill set that Dr. Bimshed is referring to is important. I think when training programs are hiring people or residents, they are hiring people who can use the literature that exists and apply to their day-to-day clinical medicine. That's what they're looking for. Unless you are going to like a program which has a physician-centered track. So I think it's good to have. So just to give you a number comparison, in average, IM resident in US have about 3.3 publications or conference papers. While on orthopedics, that numbers go up to as like 25 plus. So as you go with more competitive specialties, that number is going to become stronger. I also want to dispel a myth here that community programs don't like research experience. If you ask any community program PD, one of the pain for us is the scholarly activity. To engage people in scholarly activity. As a PD, I may not be able to give a lot of protected time, but you will be my vice president if you come in and you can lead some sort of quality initiatives and do some publications. But remember, this is a residency program. The focus is on the clinical learning, not so much so on the research tracks and things like that. So it's good skill to have. It's what all of us should do as clinicians. We are all clinical scholars.
Add one thing as well. I think more than anything else, if somebody that has a publication, that speaks more of the discipline that you went through, right? The whole pain of coming up with a hypothesis, writing up, lots of different ways to do research and writing the method section, result section, discussion section, putting the references in, submitting it, getting rejected, editing it. That discipline is, I think, is what people speaks more than anything else. Yeah.
I will just add, I think if you have any opportunity to do any research, please do it. Think it as an investment in your future. Don't think it as a mean of getting into residency. This is gonna go way beyond that. If you have done good research, you will get good fellowship, you will get good academic position. You are not going to get into academic position or an academic job at a good institution if you have no research background. It's very difficult to get into those programs even after graduating from very good residency programs. But if you don't have research experience, you're not going to get an academic job.
So the next question I have is the US clinical experience, and a lot of our candidates are confused with between the externship and observership, and unfortunately, the externships are not available these days that many, and then you need to have malpractice insurance. It's harder route to take, so most of them have the observership. How do you guys see it in the CV of applicants when you're reviewing it? And what are the things they can do to improve their experience at observership that would sort of make it more valuable for the PDs?
So observership, if ideally, if you can, do it in the field which you're applying in. Have a personal connection with that person. If you go to somebody's office for 4 weeks, make them notice that you are there, that you are asking questions, you are intelligent, you can communicate, you are punctual, they can trust your judgment, be inquisitive. And in that way, even become a painful object in the room so that they remember you. But if you're standing quiet in the room and just not saying anything, what are they going to write about you in the letter, right? So your observership experience, if you can develop a rapport with the person you're working with, that can open the door for you for a research spot or even residency application, etc., etc. Use that as an opportunity and get involved. Don't just be a quiet observer there. Observer doesn't mean you're just silent. Speak up. Yes, do not touch the patient in many circumstances, but speak up, ask questions so that then they can write that this person asked intelligent questions and then he got or she got involved in a research project I was working on. So letter becomes more personal.
Also, it's become very difficult lately to get into observership, especially after COVID. In our university, we haven't had any external observer for at least 3 years now. So it has become very, very hard. So I think the way I'm absolutely correct. I think getting into observership has become the next step. So in my mind, for foreign graduates, it is not for applying this match and next match. It's not a deal breaker. I think everybody knows that for foreign graduates, it's virtually impossible to do any observership.
So I wanted to take Dr. Jamshed's view on paid observerships. And anything you want to share, what are your thoughts about it? How does it look on the CV if someone finds out? And should applicants be paying the money? And are there things they should be looking for in that experience?
So just briefly to answer that question, paying for an observership is fine as long as it's to the organization and not the person who's writing a letter. It's just that simple. It's a conflict of interest. Program directors are becoming more aware. I can't share the details, but the telemedicine program directors are reviewing and doing the survey on this, and this will become a little more obvious. Actually, to inform you guys whether observership is even worth doing. But if you do it, first of all, don't let people take advantage of you. You are observing, you're not doing anything else. If you're paying, basically that means you're buying the letter of recommendation for $1,500, right? So at the organization level, it's expected that you're going to do observership and then get a letter or evaluation or whatever. But at a personal level, when you go to a private practice doctor, that money goes into their pocket. And no offense to private doctors, but it would be fine if they weren't writing you a letter. There is not, I need people to understand there's nothing illegal about them asking. There is no law against it. There's no medical board problem against it. The issue is ethics. The issue is conflict of interest. And that's a big problem. So you're actually giving someone money and they're writing you a letter. If it wasn't about observership, think about how that comes across to you. So that's really where we are. And I think that, like Dr. Aziz said, programs are recognizing that it's becoming hard. So that's going to be taken into account. And then, gradually programs are trying to figure out, so Yale has one, Harvard has one, why don't we have one? So I think that will either become a norm that we're going to have observerships, or it's just going to die away. It's just going to go away.
Okay, so let's go to the floor. There are some questions you had, Joe.
I'm here for my step 3, where meanwhile back in Pakistan, I was applying. I have worked since my graduation in basically emergency medicine, like emergency departments. And I wish to go to emergency medicine and match into emergency. But it is like from the past 3 months, I have been writing to emergency program directors, program coordinators, but I haven't had a positive response from any. So if I have to go to emergency medicine and I want to streamline that, so how is it possible that I get an EM observership and show my orientation that I do actually want to do it? I don't want to go like do internal medicine or peds medicine because I am looking for emergency medicine. So if I do internal medicine, does that reflect bad on my application that is like confused or not oriented or focused?
See, that's actually the good thing for you is that you have to get the story filled out, right? That is your seed. You have to use that. So who's going to fill out your story? Why?
I can ask my supervisor there
Yes.
in Pakistan. Yeah,
Yes,
but shouldn't I be working on like getting a slow from here? Is it essential to get a
you
slow from
cannot get
here?
a slow from here.
Okay.
You have to work enough.
Yeah, okay.
The slow has to be from the place where you have worked at least 3 months or more. And that's not a rule, that is a recommendation. Because the slow means that you are, they know you.
Okay.
That is your letter of recommendation, that is your evaluation.
Right.
Everything else you could get, from wherever, it's actually going to be irrelevant. Unless it's from, so, and the other thing for ER you can do, and maybe Sadiq and Dr. Aziz can help is, you can observe at community ERs and be an observer at community ERs. Don't, maybe not read up academic ERs, they won't let you do it, but maybe community.
Thank you.
So for emergency medicine, I think that like Dr. Jamshed was saying, slowing matters the most for them. They want to see that specialty specific experience. Well, emergency medicine has become more available for IMGs. We also need to know why it has become more available. It is fast-paced field. There's a lot of emotional stress and that comes to the residents and clinicians. So they want to see if this person can handle the environment of emergency medicine. So that's why, I think I would still use that experience from Pakistan because that person can talk more about, your experience while working in emergency medicine atmosphere.
So I think unlike the specialties, the Pakistani experience in emergency room is a real good experience. You have no resources and you've dealt with crazy problems. So if your letter, whoever's writing your letters can just highlight that the ER in Pakistan is actually way more disastrous than the ER here, that would go in your favor. You can really handle stress.
So, and that's actually true for most letter of recommendations. Even when I write the letter, my first paragraph is actually about what the experience is. What is it that they're doing? So you can use that to explain what emergency medicine is like in Pakistan. It could be very exciting and
Thank you.
And so I did one paid observation. I'm not worried about the brain part, I'm very worried about the generic or the precise level of recommendation that he's gonna write. Because when I went there, I saw that there were like 20, 30 students a month coming to him. And I'm just concerned that he writes a very generic LOR, he gives the same LOR to 10 or 20 of those students. So how will I?
it's just one aspect of the application. And it's an observership. I would say focus on your personal statement, on your scores, and somehow use the application to share with us, what is it that you learned? What was your experience? Okay, by now I'm sure half the program directors already know this person's name. I wouldn't worry about it.
Hi, assalamualaikum. My name is Maha. I'm a MD student here in the US. I'm interested in one of those integrated programs, either vascular or cardiothoracic. Do you have any suggestions of what an applicant can do to make themselves more competitive since it's an integrated program?
Or just happy that I'm not competing with most of the applicants. So for foreign graduates, so I can tell you for vascular, you really have to, the program really has to know that that is exactly what you want. Because even in US, most medical students will not have enough experience of vascular surgery. So somebody has to be able to issue application, for example, your letter of recommendation from vascular surgeons. At least 2 of them should clearly say that you are really interested. That there is a good story, whatever your story that you're interested in. Your personal statement should also reflect that this is really, really what you want. If you have research papers, 1 or 2 papers in vascular surgery, that story aligns. I can tell you for foreign graduates, most of the time what happens is that somebody has research in emergency labs. They've done observership in ENT, and now they're applying for vascular surgery. So that's not going to fly. So make sure your story is success, and of course you have to have good support.
In your surgical rotation during your MS4 or 3, make sure that you spend time in vascular, make sure you get letters from vascular surgeons. If you have opportunity to do electives far from your home institution, do that in specialty, and that's true for any specialty. And try to get it with somebody who's really well known.
Hello, I'm Vinod from Tamil, and thank you so much for having me here, and thank you to my mentors and my fellows. So I'm doing step 3 in August, and I'm doing scheduling as well in Texas. So one question, and sometimes this is so discouraging for medical students. So this year, inshallah, I'm going to apply for internal medicine residency. And that question said, I have heard 3 cases last year. And the cases was that 3 students with good step 1, step 2, and step 3 scores, 3 LORs from USC, but they didn't get matched in internal medicine. Thank you.
So I just think don't compare yourself to any other. It's what we are seeing is that it's residency is getting competitive, but IMG numbers and overall they're holding up. So is the effort you can put in, and rest is you can leave it to Allah, and use your support system. It's gonna be a tough ride. I can tell you from here onwards, you're gonna have a lot of emotions. You need people who support you, who cheer for you. And unfortunately, there are people on the both ends. So there are program directors and there are candidates. They care about the medical education piece and the medicine, but that's the process. How process is. Unfortunately, we don't have enough spots, residency spots. So just try your best. Gather yourself with good support system. Keep working on your emotional health. One thing that I've noticed is a lot of time, I'm glad no one asked this question recently. Can you tell me about my chances of matching? I can tell you I've been, involved with YPC for the last 7 years. I've stopped giving chances for matching. People surprise me at it. There are a lot of success stories, and I can tell you each of you will match if you keep working hard and if you follow the path.
I would also say having higher scores sometimes goes against you if you are not humbling yourself down in the interview experience. If your score is 275, that doesn't guarantee you a residency spot. Right? So you have to continue the follow-up, be engaged throughout the process, the letters, your story, everything counts. Score is just one aspect of it.
Hi, my name is Christopher Rosado. I'm from Canada. I'm from psychiatry. I will also be applying for neurology and medicine. Not as a fact, looking for another decision in case I don't get into psychiatry. Number 1 spot is in New York City. However, being Canadian, being from I know my chances of getting into a specialty that's very competitive, very wanted state. I have done medical rotation with other people here. They are applying to other programs at the same hospital, expressing an interest. Is there some crosstalk? Because that's what I've heard. Right? Don't apply to psychiatry. Only apply to psychiatry. Only apply to neurology, neurology, don't apply to psychiatry. So what is this whole sort of dynamic? Because I just want to get into it. So it's the whole.
So, it really depends on where you're applying at. I would, psychiatry has become extremely competitive. Last year, the match rate was in top 4 or 5 specialties. There were only 22 spots that went into SOAP last year. My concern with most people is go for backup specialties and try to gain experience of each specialty. So that makes you look like you're less interested in that particular specialty. For example, my hospital is a small hospital. A person who's going to be organizing the interviews is going to do for both family practice. So slightly she's going to know if you are at interviewing at both places. My suggestion to you would be, if you are truly interested in psychiatry, apply for transitional year. I am. You can get 4 years of 4 months of internal medicine experience, 2 months of neurology experience. You can get into the GY2 spots that open up all the time in psychiatry. Psychiatry fellowships are less competitive. We have people who matched after doing 1 year of transitional year into child fellowship and some other fellowships. So I think, just if you have someone you seek guidance from, talk to them. And, people who has been through this process, I think they can get you better. I will encourage you, I know psychiatry is becoming competitive and residency is becoming competitive, but think about transitional care.
I agree with Dr. But do you understand the concept of why we have prelim and transition years?
I'm not clear about the difference.
So transition year is for when, in general, is for when you don't know what you want to do, when you're still thinking. Think of prelim year as, I really want to do this, but it's so competitive that it might be difficult, so I want to show my interest, right? They do that a lot in general surgery. It's an art in general surgery. That's how we learn. You apply for prelim, if you get in, you work really hard, you impress the faculty, and you hope that you're gonna get the next year's spot or whichever. Psych has become like that. So think of it that way. If you apply for internal medicine and psych, that will make them think that you will do either, because if after a year of internal medicine, you leave internal medicine and try to go into psych, that will reflect very poorly, right? But if you do prelim or transitional, that will actually reflect well. So yes, programs can know that you have applied, but if that happens, you have to be ready to figure out how you're going to respond to that question.
So I can share a story from this year. So there's a psych candidate who was interested truly in psych. She applied in psychiatry and internal medicine categorical. She in categorical medicine was her lowest choice. She matched categorical medicine. Now she wants to leave the program. She wants to come into psychiatry. I think there are better ways to handle this, like prelim, in transitional year. I like the transitional year option better than prelim medicine because there are some other nuances that come with prelim medicine. Visa issues, then you have to match it to PGY2 position. So that would be my answer.
So I had the commitment from PDs for 90 minutes, 12:30. Just ask them to, some may have to leave, but if they can stick around for 3 minutes, I want to ask 2 questions related to interviewing because those are anxiety provoking. So I want you to get some opinion. And after that, we'll open the floor for 15 minutes and some of us will be here. We'll take questions and around 12:45, we'll do the poster session. So the first one is the first question that is asked, tell me about yourself. And the people are spending so much time on it and they're like, what should I say? And preparing in front of the mirror. What are you guys looking for? What kind of answer you want when you ask, tell me about yourself? What are prime doctors looking for? So they can prep that.
And one word, authenticity. I think, many people ask this question, but I think this is one of the most important questions. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not states can be assessed with that question, but I think that's an open field for you. So I've seen very good answers and I've seen people doing horrible ones. But I think what people are looking for is authenticity, to be very honest. Like, something about yourself which speaks as to how much hard work you have done. And you've reached this stage in life because of your hard work and your achievements and exactly what you're looking for. There are 1,000 different ways of doing it, but one word is to be authentic. Do not be somebody else.
So you might want to write these down as points because there's no one answer, right? So for some interview people, for us, it's an icebreaker. That's all it is. We want you to start getting comfortable because people are nervous. It's an opportunity for you to talk about something fun, maybe talk about what you like, giving me an opportunity to ask you more about that question, and then we go on to more serious discussion. So it can also be an icebreaker, but whatever you say, icebreaker should be an authentic icebreaker. But don't start with, I am a medical student from the APPNA University. I graduated in 2023 and I am interested in telemedicine because that's not a paper for
This is a conversation starter or icebreaker. So for me, I want to know a little bit about you as a human being too. So you can mention about if you have kids, there are things that you like to do. You can talk about it's an open-ended question, so you can take it where you want to take it. Don't make it too long. A lot of time people people go on for like 3-4 minutes, so I'm gonna sleep in the middle of it. So make it concise and like Dr. Jamshed was mentioning, you don't have to describe your name and your medical school, all of that. I have that in front of me in your CV. And you don't have to be a comedian. We did some faculty interviews last year. So there was this girl that made a remark that I was grown up in Brazil and I played with monkeys. So that's not with me. That's how I started my conversation with her. So what we do is we did, every faculty member was there. That was for family practice residency. And everyone among the candidates got them to introduce themselves for first couple of minutes and then went into the separate interview sessions. So that's why I started my conversation with her. So it's an open-ended question. Be authentic. Don't take it long. You don't have to repeat what's in your CV. Just think about it. You can talk a little bit about, if you have a kid. I have a 3-year-old. You can bring it up.
From there, 90 seconds is good enough for your answer.
I think the only thing I'll say is emphasize that it should be short, but in my mind, there is no wrong answer. So you can bring up whatever you want as long as it's not too long. It's however you would describe yourself. My personal preference is if it is more focused on your professional life or your personal life, you can bring a personal life in a negative way. However,
I once watched a video from somebody who coaches people, and his advice was that basically what people want to know is, who are you? Do you understand the job we have advertised? How do you fit into that job? Why should we take you? So apply these few thoughts to this question.
Okay, so the other question is, something that's becoming very common. We used to just have one question back in the days, but now there are tons of questions around behavioral interviewing. People want to know about your personality, who you are. If we put you in a stressful situation, how do you recover from it? So they will ask you, tell me about a conflict you had with your senior, how did you resolve it? Tell me about you had a colleague who was drunk and you were working with them and you were a medical student, you guys were on the floors. What did you do? Those kinds of questions that you need to know what to do in those situations. But the one I think that's always been there, it's asked from everyone is, tell me about your weaknesses. They're trying to put you at a weaker spot and see how you recover. So from the program directors over the years, can you guys share some of the good responses people have had towards their weaknesses? How to describe it, the response that you like, someone said and then stuck with you. Yeah, that's a good.
It's just going to be work. But I think the one key aspect is you have to play that question smartly, right? We're all humans, we all have weaknesses. One thing somebody told many years ago was that weaknesses should be in the past, strengths should be in the present. If somebody asks me if was strength in the present, you talk about strength which you have now, and weakness something in the past that you've overcome. So keep that in mind as well. And I know most common people say I want to be hard. That's gets boring. And people say that. So come up with innovative ways of saying that, but try to keep it in the past.
And I have a question. So who wants to volunteer? Go ahead. Let's give this young lady a chance.
Okay.
Why don't you tell us your week?
So my weakness is, when I was younger, I was so afraid to talk in front of people. And I had to overcome that because there is no place for me in the world if I'm shy and I don't like to talk to people. So I overcome this by being, I've been friends with who were, more talkative, and that's how I overcome this. And now I like to talk. If I'm not talking, it will hurt me.
I think it's very genuine. I think maybe we can. I know this may come across wrong, but maybe polish that answer a little bit, maybe refine it. But I think that's authentic. You're someone who's shy, and now you're someone who's more extroverted, and you've made an effort, and you talk about how you did that. I did that because I realized as a physician, that's a skill that might be important. So I've been working on it. I think it's good. That's genuine. So it can be a good job. So something like that. So I think that's a great.
If you would say it this way, that I was a born introvert, and I've known that some people can perceive it as a weakness, so I worked hard on it. So I'm still an introvert, but I feel comfortable in speaking in conversation. So you can say the same thing, but about polished, right?
And then I think the key was that have the weakness in the past and bring the strength of you, because you worked on it and you tell them what you did. So it's now you're talking about your strength, and this is what you did to overcome it.
So I think we need to understand, why this question is being asked. People are not out to get you. They're not gonna need this against you. What they want to know is whether you recognize that you must have you have some strengths, you have some challenges. Whether you can acknowledge that those challenges and can work on that, that's what they're looking for. So the wrong answer would be that I don't have any weaknesses. Because one of the core competencies is that's practice-based learning and improvement. So I'm Dr. Ashraf's resident. He gives me some feedback that this is something I need to work on. And I tell him, I know more than you. You don't need to tell me. But by the way, I know more than you. How that's going to reflect you on your training. So, just think about it, be genuine. I know most of the people give generic answer because this is a safe place. Most people will say I'm detail oriented. I cannot say no. What else comes? I personally liked the response from one candidate last year. She said, when I'm in the room, and this is how she was, and you can, you can feel that I bring a lot of energy in the room. I'm really passionate. So that can be, pleasant for a lot of people, because you may want to be around people who talks more, who is, doing more social stuff, things like that. For other people, I don't know if it is deficiency or challenge for anyone, but some people may get, intimidated by that. So I think that was a very good way. That's how she was, and that's how she described it. It appeared very authentic to me. So just talk to your friends and family and see what is it, the deficiencies you have. Obviously, there are things that you don't want to say. Do mock interviews so they can polish your questions further.
Okay, great. So I think we're towards the end. I want to start from here. If you guys want to say any closing remarks, brief, I will take those from the panelists and then open the floor for questions. If anyone has to leave, I don't want to hold you guys here, but we'll be here. Our YPC team is here. We can take questions.
The only thing I want to say is don't downplay the importance of your past experiences, especially in Pakistan. That's what made, that's the reason you are here. And so emphasize them and say what you have learned from it, while adding why you chose to come to US. But don't downplay your process.
Enough has been said. I would say, the whole application process is to know who you are. First, you need to know yourself, who you are. What is your story? What is in there which I will remember after I have mentioned? And if you don't communicate that to me, how will I?
So I would believe in the message of hope. A lot of what you would believe that you don't have strengths, actually you have a lot of strengths. You came from a country that's thousands of miles away. We speak different languages and different culture, and you're doing your best to adjust this. So it is just as the process. It takes time. It can be an emotional roller coaster, but I can tell you, all of you have got a spot. Get someone good advice and keep working on your application. You have your place, and you only need one spot. That's what you need.
Absolutely, my message is the same. I think, Mujahid and myself are classmates and we were doing an internship together. So my lesson which I learned in my life is that there's nothing which is impossible. You do hard work and everything is possible. No matter the whole universe can tell people, me and Mujahid, we can never become surgeons because we're foreign graduates and we're not good enough. And here we are, 20 years later, we made surgeons. So it doesn't matter. Somebody was saying that the situation is difficult, situation is tough, nobody's emailing you back. And Sadiq said, you email 1,000 people and one replies you back, that's your ticket. You need one spot.
So I have a message. Any international medical graduate here to actually stop thinking like an IM. You need to think like US seniors, or you need to start thinking like you're a medical student and a graduate. That's who you are. Do not think that the students here do not go through the same struggles that you do. They go through all this in undergrad. They spend sometimes 2-3 years before they even go to medical school. The struggles are the same. The stage of life is different. You must change your thinking process. The observership is not about the letter of recommendation. The observership is about learning. Because if you don't approach it like that, your personal statement will be like that, your LOR is going to be like, everything is going to be like that. It's all a learning process, growing professionally. None of us were like this when we started. We start very early in Pakistan. Canada might be different. We go straight into med school after FSC or A levels. The youngest person in my class was 16 years old. I can't even imagine my son going to med school right now. So don't underestimate yourself. Okay, so we have to start evening the platform a little bit, but you can't do that without changing your thinking.
Thank you, and thank you very much to all the panelists. Again, I want to no one hold you guys here. Whoever has the time, please stick around and we'll take questions. Anyone can leave and commitment. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Sandeep Pradhan had a comment, and then we will see.
Sure. This is Dr. Grum. I'm one of the medical directors, one of the faculty at SC in Pathology, and then president of Pakistani Pathology Society. Just a couple of comments. I think great session. One of the things I'm also leading the observership committee, and what I always realize that every month people are reaching out to me. So, for example, 1 month they are reaching out to me for internal medicine patient, and the next month pediatric, and on and on. So again, just stick to one specialty and just follow that path. The other thing is the letter of recommendations that the patient. I get about 15 to 20 students in a year. It's hard for me to write personalized letters just to 20 students in a year. So just imagine when you are going to a patient where there are 15, 30 pathology specific now, as over very competitive, especially now. Back when I was applying, there were like multiple unfilled spots, and this year there was only one spot in pathology, which was unfilled, right? So it's very competitive. So just be careful. And then what we are looking at it this year, most of the students, many of my students who did not match, in pathology, 265, 268, 260 scores, and they didn't match. They only had 2 to 3 months of experience versus one of my mentees who was a 2005 grad, 2010 grad, she had at least 3 to 4 years of consistent experience in pathology, and they match as compared to a 2021 grad and just 2 to 3 months of experience. They didn't match. So just focus on that. The experience always counts. So one of my students was telling me that, just an observership with a smaller community program, they had access to EPIC versus, you go in a bigger systems and all that, and you don't have much access. And I get this comment often. I work in a community hospital, the experience that my students get with me as compared to what they get at an academic program. So, those are just important factors. Just be careful and just be on the right path. Thank you very much.
So I see there's a lot of anxiety that probably right now is not a good. So I'll tell you, I've been collecting data of residency applicants for MASH every year since 2009. So anybody who's not from Pakistan, can you raise your hand? Okay, where are you guys from? Iran and Canada. Okay, so most of the audience is from Pakistan, barring these two applicants. Let me tell you, the maximum number of residency applicants who matched in past 2 decades ranged between 300 to 340. That was from like 2009 till 2012, 2022. Or 2021. So last year we had 586 verified matched applicants. So if today this is the best time to apply for residency in US as a Pakistani IMG, we have had history's best result, going from 338 the year before to 586. And as far as specialties are concerned, that we have had people matching IR directly, vascular surgery, neurosurgery, dermatology, ophthalmology. So right now, like Dr. Jamshid pointed out, the field is all open up. You can match into any specialty. You can go into a top university program. A mentee of mine matched at Harvard this year. So you can do anything. So stop thinking like you're an IMG or you are at a disadvantage. If anything, you have a better playing field than what we had. And you guys are way more aware than what we were a decade or two ago. Thank you.
Question and opportunity the first time.
So actually my question is about couples match. Nobody talked about it, how program directors see when they see a couples match application, and what are some tips to increase that you and the spouse match at the same program or somewhere near, at least in one state.
So, Joe, YPC के members are going to get to the stage, so some of the questions. You can start with this one.
I did a partial couple match on my mentees, did a couple match this year, right? So couple match, things are very tricky. You have to play good. Question is, are both the spouses, do they have similar applications, similar scores, similar CV or not? If you do, so the likelihood of you getting a couple match is very, very high. 2 of my mentees, they had a successful couple match this last match cycle. But most of the times, what I've seen is one spouse is better and the other more. So stuff like that. In that case, what you need to do, the person who has better CV, better research, better stuff, they match, and then they help the other person next year. That's what I did. So just know that. But like I said, things are improving. In the past, the likelihood of matching as a couple was much more. But now I feel that it's getting much, much better and the field is more even. Did that answer your question?
There's another question. Who else had the question? Up.
My question is about couples matching as well. Question is that
Sorry, we can't hear you.
my question is about couple matching as well. My question is if one of the spouses is applying to say IM and one of them is applying to IM,
What I've heard is that one of the applicants can email the program director to talk. Is this true? Like, will we talk to another TE to get other spouse an interview?
Yes, that can happen. So again, two of my mentees, one of them was applying for neurology and the wife was applying for internal medicine. They did that. So to be honest with the program, that I am applying in this specialty, my wife is applying in this specialty, I'll appreciate, can help her get an interview. If we have both applied in this hospital, the likelihood of us ranking your program will be much higher.
It's just that what I mentioned is that the chances are always going to be lower. The reason is the number of programs that go for complements and all that, and then also the size of the program, right? So, for example, if you are going into pathology now, there are only 2 to 5 to 6 spots. In the smaller program, there are only 2 spots. So they probably will not, like to have the same family, the same couple, because you're going to be taking patients from. So just be careful about what, especially if you're applying for pathology, it will not be ideal, especially if you're going for a smaller program. Go for a couple.
And that's why I precisely mentioned that whoever is an applicant with better scores, better CV matches first. That's what I did. Where I graduated, we used to have 5 to 6 residency applicants. And I come from a radiology residency program. So I did my residency a year before. My wife started a year after me. And I've known a lot of couples who have done that successfully, because once you're in a program, you have maintained a good reputation that you're hardworking and all that. Then the following year, they are more than likely to consider your wife in that situation. That being said, couple match is actually, as a couple, it's among all these pathways, that's the most challenging one. Okay? Especially if you're applying a different specialty. But and I've also seen that people, what they will do is 1 year they will apply in one specialty, they'll go on MASH, but the other year they will switch. And my cousin did that. She did prelim surgery at UCSF, and her husband did medicine in NYU. The next year after finishing prelim surgery, she started doing general surgery in the same program at NYU.
And if one of the spouses matches and the other one doesn't, how, like, you don't know where you match for 1 week, and that's the week that you apply to sew. So if the other spouse is applying to sew, where does she go? Like, where does she go?
You don't know, and nobody knows, right? So that's a risk that you're willing to assume, that you don't have a choice, and unfortunately, that's how it is.
And see, the way I look at it is like, going match versus going unmatched, right? So you would rather just go for the match, and then many times it's very possible that, next year you switch to the program or switch at least to the program, the region, if not the same program. It always happens, and I've seen those cases every year. We see those cases. Next year you can just transfer the program to your, program.
So just to, I gave you an example of my cousin. She wasn't that sick. She didn't know where her husband matched. And she picked prelim surgery in UC San Francisco, saying that her husband was in San Francisco. He matched him. That's okay. That's like a risk of willing to assume when you want to train as a doctor. The thing was a year later she was
I actually was going to give a comment on this more from the woman physician's perspective. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. APPNA. I'm chair of JCU YPC committee I'm doing it for 10 years now. I'm also director of pediatric fellowship in California, and I participate in the business program as well. Just to give you a background, I have been counseling women physicians a lot of this issue, because the person usually gets bashed is nothing better than say that at this point I can. But the thing is that you have to, as a couple, have this discussion. These are the options. Both of us are going to get matched. Couple match, most problematic match, both of them will not get matched. Most of the time, the difference between the scores is significant. With husband having higher scores, wife taking care of kids.
Attendees there, we are, I can take some of the questions from here. So I think we already talked about CVS will count in application. Yes, it will. And I think they address that experience is important. It's just how you present it and put it on your CV.
Dash like.
And does Pakistani residency like a 3 years count? Then,
All the applicants here, can I request you all to?
yeah,
apply
generic
for
letter
the
from a big name won't help you. The letter of
faculty?
recommendation should be personalized. So that'll be important. You want a personalized letter, but not a generic letter.
So all couple matches, have a discussion among yourselves, so you know what you are doing.
Does the content of letter matter to the name or the name of the process? It's the content. So you want to have someone who is in academics, that always helps, who is writing the letter for you, but it's the content. They need to talk about how you are going to be good in the field. What are your personal attributes that you bring to the field? So I think it's the more it's personalized, the more it's going to help you. Will step 1 be used to filter IM application? But they won't use the score, right? But they want to use the pass and fail. So it will be part of the filter in terms of the pass and fail. And should the 10 impactful experience include all your USCE before any volunteer or research work is highlighted? Not all of the USCE. You want to give a good picture of who you are. So you can include your research and other volunteer impactful experience that you have that you want to showcase.
Also, I don't know if you know me, I have a video.
And then my name is Fatima. I'm a match applicant. Can you please tell me? Okay, so tele-rotation, you know, it's good to have in person, but if you cannot get anything, then you don't have choices. Is it high on the list now? But if you can't get anything else, then having some experience, explain to them, you tried, either you couldn't get the visa or you couldn't get other rotations, so you had to go through tele route. Is there anyone else with a question that we can take? Because we're gonna move to our poster session soon. Let's take last two questions and then we'll do the poster one.
Assalamualaikum. Is there any specific advice you could give to apply for diagnostic radiology?
Diagnostic radiology. So I'll tell you one more thing, man. For radiology, we have had the best match last year. We have had 6 people match into radiology. 2 of them matched directly into IM. So I'll tell you, all the people who matched into radiology did 2+ years of research and great programs with multiple publications. People have also switched specialties. So let's say if you're an internal medicine person, urology person, you can switch into radiology. That's the second pathway. But for when did you graduate? 21. So you're a recent graduate. If you're a recent graduate, I think the pathway for radiology is do 2 years of research at a reputable program, get multiple years of multiple publications, and then apply the following year. Like I said, and there's also I run a radiology interest group for Pakistanis. Please join that group. All the people who have matched in radiology in past 10 years, they are in that group, mentor, and we are very close link. I'll just add into that. All right. Once we're done here, talk to me. Thank you. We have one more question from the lady here. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to ask more about the couples match. So there's an option in the IRAS application. You have to check it, right? If you do couples match. If you want to keep it unchecked, and when the time comes for rank on the list, and you both merge your.
Yes, and that's exactly what. On IRAS, I will not recommend you check a couple match. What you can always do is one person gets the match and or gets an interview and tries to get an interview for the other one. But at the time of ranking, you can rank as a couple match. When you're applying, I would not recommend you to apply as a couple match. What that means is you're telling the program, if you're only inviting me for an interview, don't bother. Right? So I will say when you're applying, don't check it. Couple match. And like I said, listen to that video on the channel. And I think any here in second row, she had a question.
I think you had.
Yes, sir. I was using the last one. I'm applying for internal medicine in this year. So I have 3 internal medicine LOR and 1. So can I apply the LOR?
Right? So now, like Kumar mentioned previously, the panel mentioned like psych and internal medicine doesn't really go together, right? So you just have internal medicine, family medicine. I was in internal medicine before, and I did my residency from Pakistan. I got my into internal medicine before I switched to pathology. But how I justify myself is that in my interviews in pedagogy, that this is what I want to do. How does that make me different? So then I brought it up to my, strength rather than weakness. Why this is a strength? Because now I know the background, how clinical the diagnostic. Then I brought it up in my interviews that this is what I have to offer you more than any other, candidate. So that kind of fits. But like the panel mentioned, one side only, you have multiple mutations, impediments, and then you have one side. It just doesn't. So, try to get more rotations. And again, don't mention it that you have 3 LORs, you have 3 rotations. So the letters of recommendations are for support, but what did you learn of the rotation is more important.
Since you suggest that you apply in only one time, internal medicine.
Of course, if you have some family medicine or experience, you can go with family medicine.
Family medicine, and you are also giving the
Quick thing to add here is, be honest, if you're truly interested in psychiatry, then make sure you tell me that I want to do psychiatry. I wasn't able to get that vision. And was to begin. If you're not interested in psychiatry, you're applying in internal medicine and
Otherwise,
psychiatry is important. I'll tell you, you won't get a single interview in psychiatry. I applied for radiology. I got 12 radiology from Stanford, Hopkins, Yale, UHSU, and guess how many interviews I got in internal medicine? Zero.
USB.
So because my CV showed that all my research, all my lectures, everything that I've done in my.
We'll have to see, some projectors have the.
Medicine, PD looked at it and they're like, oh, this guy's going into radiology no matter what. And if he goes on national, he's not gonna take our medicine, he's gonna apply next year and do our residency. So you know your CV, right? So just know that you can't use psychiatry as a backup if you're not interested.
In a similar story, right? I mean, I have on my CV mentioned in this recent experience with Kali, but that was 10-12 years ago, right? So at that time, there were many spots. So again, I had most of my interviews were in 8 interviews in only one in pathology, but that was enough for me, like the panel mentioned, all you need is one interview, this is what I wanted, and then at the end of this.
So just one announcement. Does anyone have a laptop with the HDMI input we would need it? Because we have several, they have type C, if you can connect. So get someone, if you have it, can you loan it to us? Last question.
Hello, so my question is that if the interviews are virtual this year too, so if someone is in Pakistan during interview season, will this be an disadvantage rather than being here in the US for the interviewers? Like, will they see me as a, better if I'm here or in Pakistan?
I have 2 words for you, absolutely not.
But you should be doing something. The point is that, when you are interviewing, that you should be doing something. What are you doing? What are you going to talk about?
Quickly answer, like in virtual, they will ask how they about yourself. We were talking about this briefly. I have this, pattern to answer, tell me about yourself. I say that it's present, past, future,
Figure out a way to just do a presentation.
Currently working as a house officer, Robert. In the past, like, right, we did from this.
That's the problem. You get, and look at it in future.
I want to give all your program will help me get basic foundation, get good profession. So that I can apply for my office, this and this. That's really, so
So we are towards the end of our webinar. So thank you whoever joined us. So we'll be turning off the live.